More bad news Bews, the ex reveals all. By Stephen Cook. When a trendy Newmarket cafe went belly up in 2018, owner Barnaby Bews left a trail of debt right across Auckland before disappearing into the shadows. But bad debts and bad deeds have a habit of catching up to you, as we discover in our ongoing investigation into the man known as Bad News Bews. In the 3 years they were together, Nicola Boothby gave smooth-talking wheeler-dealer Barnaby Bad News Bews everything she had, her money, her trust, and ultimately her heart. In return he gave her heartbreak, despair, a string of bad debts, and in one final indignity, a sexually transmitted disease. Boothby, now 47, met Barnaby Bews, who is now going under the name of David Bews, back in 2000 when he was working with her father at a Holden dealership in Taupo. She initially spurned his advances, but Bews was persistent and eventually won Boothby's heart. What followed was a nightmare 3 years of bad debts and bad deeds involving Bews, who in recent months following publicity over his involvement in Newmarket's failed Zarbo Deli Cafe and catering has become known as Bad News Bews. Horror stories have emerged of how Bews took money from friends and business associates while at the same time enjoying the life of Riley, driving fancy cars and enjoying overseas trips. Back in 2018, when the company closed its doors for non-payment of lease payments, Bews owed secured, unsecured and preferential creditors a total of $418,000. Among the hardest hit were David Wallace and Jenny Cameron, who 2.5 years on are still trying to recover the $145,000 they lost when the cafe went under. If you are looking for signs of why Zarbo went under, you possibly need to turn the clock back to the early 2000s when Bews was romantically involved with Boothby. She claims she was robbed blind by the fast-talking Lothario, and says the years of betrayal sent her into a downward spiral of drinking, depression, and in the end financial ruin. He ripped me off the whole time, claims Boothby, who now lives in Brisbane where she works for an auction house. Barnaby then threw a massive 30th birthday with Bews failing to honor a promise to pay the catering bill. This was just the tip of the iceberg. When Boothby's parents sold their home in Whangameda, Bews was immediately at them for money, managing to get $3,000 out of the couple, money which should have gone towards their retirement savings. But the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back and sent Boothby bankrupt was a dodgy deal over the purchase of a used Range Rover motor vehicle. Bews convinced Boothby to part with her Toyota Prado as a trade-in on the vehicle, and then, according to Boothby, secured $70,000 finance for the balance. The only issue was that the finance, unbeknown to Boothby, was taken out in her name on the vehicle, which at the time couldn't have been worth any more than $30,000. How Bews got finance in Boothby's name remains a mystery Bews certainly isn't shedding any light on. He was contacted this week for comment but refused to address the Range Rover issue or any of the other allegations from Boothby. Boothby said when the Range Rover deal went sour and she discovered the full extent of Bews' deception, she was absolutely livid and heartbroken. To make matters worse, she discovered he had been sleeping around on her, which became apparent after testing positive for a sexually transmitted disease. To add insult to injury, she had to pass on the embarrassing news to her parents after being forced to seek their financial assistance to cover the costs of the test. All these issues combined began to take their toll and Boothby began drinking heavily. It was a dark time in my life. The affairs, the bad debts, it all became too much, she said. Boothby decided she'd be better off leaving Bews and New Zealand for a new life in Perth, but before she could catch a flight to freedom she was slapped with a summons to appear in court over the debt relating to the Range Rover motor vehicle, which was later returned to the dealership and sold for $20,000. Boothby's only option was to declare bankruptcy, and while the debt is now wiped and she is essentially a free woman, the time she spent with Bews still haunts her to this day. She has major trust issues and has struggled to maintain relationships, and for this she blames one man, bad news Bews. He's bad news all right. He always made out I was the liar and he was the martyr. I hope that he gets what's coming to him.